Want to know what your dog is thinking?
Have a challenging dog behavior you need help with?
The Dish on Dogs is your source for all your canine questions.
Improve your relationship with your dog and deepen your understanding of your furry friend. Right here on the Dish on Dogs.
Welcome to the Dish on Dogs podcast. I'm your host, Jackie. I'm here with one of our franchisees, Richard Stoll. He's going to be opening in the Gaithersburg, Maryland area, and hopefully the next couple of months. So welcome to the show, Rich.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
I appreciate
of course. We appreciate you coming on. You're here for training week now.
I am here for training, yes, and it's been an amazing experience learning how the dogs are placed and how the dogs are managed in the facility. And you think as a dog owner you know something,
right?
And then you come meet people who know more than you, and you find out you don't know as much as you thought you did. So it's been a fascinating experience.
Right. Yeah, and a lot of franchisees come into the system and don't have a lot of dog knowledge, which we actually prefer, because as I hope you've seen through this week, we have a very specific way of doing things here at Hounds Town. So the less the franchisee thinks they know, the better, because we're then able to start on a clean slate. We're able to teach you the Hounds Town way.
Yeah. So basically you've had to unlearn me.
Well, you weren't too bad. I mean, it's great for people to come in and have experience and be comfortable managing dogs. That's for sure. Right. But we spend some time debunking, some, I guess, traditional dog management or dog training methods out there. But no, we haven't had to do that much for you, Rich.
Right. I've been fascinated, because I've said to you and I've said to Mike, I always considered myself the dog whisperer. I have two dogs who have always been well trained, and I have them hand trained. They walk well on a leash. They stop when I ask them to, but it took time to get them to learn. Well, Mike does what I took a 6-week, 8-week course in just a minute, and controls that dog so easily without fear, without the dog having any fear. The dog is just managed, and that's it. And it's just phenomenal how fast it happens, how easily it happens, and quite frankly, how natural it happens.
Right.
And so it's a whole new learning experience for me watching this.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And to talk a little bit about managing dogs, that's what our goal is here in teaching our franchisees the dog management part of this. We're not training people to be dog trainers, but we just want to be able to manage the dog safely. Right. So, well, let's talk a little bit more about your training experience overall. You've been here now for 4 days.
Fourth day, yes.
We do a combination of, business seminars, hands-on dog management, all types of different things in this, 5.5 day period. How do you feel overall just ending day 4, and getting closer to being prepared to open your location?
Right. So some of the aspects I'm familiar with. So there's a business knowledge we have. I come from the corporate environment. So I understand the business world. I understand running a business and doing a business plan. Even part of the hiring and firing, which is a challenge. Yep. Not that you want to be doing those firing parts, but that's part of the job, and you have to know that that's part of the job. Truly, what I've been fascinated with is the management of the dogs, because I didn't walk in here thinking I wouldn't learn something, but I learned far more than I thought I would.
Oh, good.
And that has been the key knowledge. I mean, we spent a whole morning in a circle with 10 dogs walking around us, and our job was to ignore them.
Right. So counterintuitive, right?
Yes. We all want to pet the dogs and say hello to dogs because we're all dog people.
Right.
But the lesson was your human interaction actually excites and bothers the dog. And if you have a lot of dogs, one dog being bothered just cascades around. So if you can bring yourself to pull yourself away and essentially ignore the dog,
While they're in that setting. Which means in their group.
In their group, right. Well, if you get in that particular group we were in a circle and they were wandering around. Mm-hmm. They were doing their thing. They were playing. They come up and say hello, and if you didn't say hello to them, they just went off and did something else.
Right.
And so they were fine in their environment. They had a little pack environment, and they were having a great time. So, but once somebody sat down on the floor, it disrupted the whole environment. They're all over that person.
Right.
And now the pack is disturbed. So that was a fascinating exercise. Of course, I was the first one down on the floor.
Right. I know it's somewhat counterintuitive, the dog management, but our goal is to create an environment for dogs where they're coming into our facilities and they're experiencing as natural a pack environment as possible. So we always talk about dogs are social pack animals, right? So they need to interact with one another, just like children do. They need to play together at recess.
Just like daycare, right?
Exactly. They need to have that social interaction with one another without us humans interrupting that or injecting ourselves too much. So we view ourselves as the kind of monitors of this play and this interaction, but not necessarily as a participant.
Right.
So that's kind of our dog management philosophy. So just, interesting to hear your perspective on it and how it affected the dog's experience, right? So when we don't interact completely with them when they're in their so-called group, it allows them to have a more natural experience with one another.
Right.
And that is what our customers are paying us for.
Right. And it actually creates a safer environment.
Yes.
Because if you're not bothering the dog isn't putting itself in a position to be hurt or, quite frankly, to hurt you.
Right. So we some dogs can redirect on one another. They can get territorial over a person if that person is not giving them attention but giving another dog attention. So those are, absolutely. We consider it a safety issue or challenge to go and get dogs unbalanced. So we're always striving for balanced packs. And with our franchisees and their employees, we want them to be the leaders, the strong leaders of that pack. And a big part of that is removing yourself and just supervising the pack. Right.
And that's been the most fascinating part of this. And Mike does such a great job of doing it so naturally.
Right.
And your team has done much of the training for what we should expect, some frequently asked questions. We were able to come in early in the morning and watch Danielle do some of the greeting of the dogs. And so this is my second time here from the time I was here in November for Discovery Day.
Yep.
And it's so smooth and easy. People just bring their dogs in, hand the dog over to Danielle, and they turn around and leave.
Right.
Of course, they also say, "I love you" and "goodbye" and "I miss you."
Right.
But it is it's such an easy transition. You've created an environment which I can only envy, and hopefully I can repeat. That people just bring their dogs in, hand the dog over, they say thank you very much, say hello to the dog, and off it goes.
Right.
And it goes into its pack environment with dogs that are similar size, shape, and temperament. And that's, I don't know what I expected when I came in early in the morning, but it wasn't excitement that I got.
Right.
And it wasn't supposed to be exciting.
Yep.
It was just supposed to be people dropping off their dogs for daycare, and it was a very easy transition. And so it was very comforting to know that transition is easy and the trust that is created here.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. And hopefully you see, because you've been here all week, the amount of dogs that we have at our facility here in Ronkonkoma, our corporate store. So, we really have more daycare dogs than ever, even pre-COVID. So we get a lot of questions, from prospective franchisees on how our business has done through the COVID crisis. And hopefully you see, just being here, the amount of phone calls we get, the amount of customers that are actually coming in the door.
Oh, yes.
And you're going in and out of these groups and these packs, and there's 75, 80 dogs here. So did you find that challenging at all?
Not with the instruction from your team.
Okay.
The things, you have a particular way of holding the leash, a particular way of making sure that leash goes on the dog. Failure to follow that ends up with the dog running through the facility.
Right.
Present company included.
Right.
And that happens. So you see members of your team do that, just the lasso and getting them ready to go so easily. And then you go and try it. You think it's easy. It's not so easy.
Takes some practice.
And, if you're not holding the leash right, the dog wants to go somewhere and it slips right out of your hand.
Right.
So there's an education in that. And having those high volume dogs and having to make sure you're not letting all the dogs out while you're going into the playpen, it's better to learn that now. Whereas in my franchise, I'll be growing into that.
Right.
I won't have that many dogs right away.
Right.
So I won't be able to experience that. I might have 2 or 3 in a room, or 5 in a room. It won't be as challenging to grab the dog. So the experience of having to grab a dog that is in with 10 other dogs, it's a learning experience, I guess. And that's essentially the theme of what I've had here is everything has been a learning experience from the dog and the dog management perspective. It's just been it's just been a worthwhile event to come do this.
Great. Well, I'm glad that you see it that way. And part of our goal in having the initial training here at corporate is to give you experience in managing 80 dogs in
the high volume.
And the high volume and the phone ringing and customers coming in. That way, when you go back, you're just, it gives you a sneak peek to what to expect, but also it kind of prepares you.
Sure.
Right?
Sure, absolutely.
So then when you, like you said, you have just maybe 2 or 3 dogs on any given day, you feel more confident because you know that you could manage 75 or 80 if you had to, because you've done it all week.
Exactly.
To some degree. So let's talk a little bit about your background and kind of how you got into how you came across Hounds Town and kind of why you decided to join the Hounds Town family.
Right. So first of all, if I hadn't had dogs, I probably wouldn't have had the confidence to do this. That's my own personality. Because I was familiar with training a dog and working with a dog and enjoying having a dog. If I wasn't used to dogs, I don't know that I would have the confidence to do it. And that's just me. Other people have a different opinion, but that was just me. So I come from corporate America. I was 21 years with a technology company, and I was looking for something different. I traveled a great deal, and interestingly enough, in the back of airline magazines are franchises. And why are they in airline magazines? Because they're looking for people like me who are traveling all over the place who don't want to do that anymore. And one of them was a dog care franchise. And I remembered it, and I didn't really do too much about it. But then circumstances changed, and I made that call to that organization. And I found, and what disappointed me about the first conversation I had with a dog care organization was the only thing they talked about was money. And they talked about how deregulated it was.
The pet care industry.
The pet care industry. It's not like child care. You don't have to have 1 per X.
Right.
Well, they were talking about how much money you make, and it's a deregulated industry, so you can have as many dogs per person as you like.
Wow.
And that was the first 20 minutes of a conversation. And while as a franchisee, our goals are to build wealth. I mean, that is a goal. Let's not hide that.
Of course.
But I'd like to enjoy what I do, which is how I end up here. And it bothered me that the only thing that they talked about was money. And we'll get to my conversation with you in a minute. But then I looked around a little bit more, looked at different things, and you can buy a job. I used to sell printers. I could have bought a franchise to sell toner cartridges. If I wanted to sell toner cartridges, I would have stayed where I was. So you can essentially buy a job. Or you can buy a franchise that looks very much like what I was doing, which was just selling stuff. And I came around through a consultant to you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple things that was impressed me is when I looked on your website, it was you and pictures of your dogs.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And everything was about the dogs. And my first conversation with the sales organization, Raintree, was about you. They talked about your passion, what you were doing, why you were doing it, Mike's background.
Mm-hmm.
Never talked about the money.
Right.
Never no, I want you to be interested in what we're doing first.
Right.
The money is an outcome. It just is.
Yep.
And if you're presenting the outcome first, it's not an impressive business model to
Yep.
me. And even when you and I had our conversation, we talked for about 45 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say before we even talked that there's a revenue opportunity, a wealth building opportunity, we were well into 40 minutes.
Right.
All you talked about from the first 20 minutes was how we care about the dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just, I said, okay, now I have someone. Now, if the finances of building the franchise work out and the expenses and what you have to do to create this franchise work out, this is a great opportunity. And like I said, the key to that discussion was you cared more about the dogs. Income and the money is just an outcome of caring for the dogs. If you care for the dogs,
right,
the wealth will follow.
It will come. Yeah, absolutely. Of course, we want our franchisees to come into the system, and everyone has financial goals, including us as a franchise system. But I agree, and that's always been Mike's philosophy is, money is not our first thought, right? Our first thought is, how do we build a system that accommodates the animals that are being trusted in our care? That's number one. And how do we find franchisees who share those same goals, right? That of course have a financial investment in the business, but more importantly, they're looking to do something different with their lives. They're looking to change their life in some way, and usually they do connect with the dog part first because it's nice to work with dogs. It can be much better than selling copiers, I'm sure. Right. If we can accomplish all of that, if we can help people do something different and take control over the kind of their own destiny while also making them financially successful, that's a home run. So those two things go hand in hand for us, and I think one cannot happen without the other.
Right. You can't not enjoy dogs.
Right.
One of the things that Mike pointed out that he sees people that get around dogs and their hands immediately go up because they're afraid.
Yeah.
If you can't get through that.
Yeah. Right.
Then this might be a difficult job for you.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't have. I probably have too much the other way.
Right. Yeah.
And I'll go in and. So I have to overcome that. And we had that discussion on our Discovery Day.
We did,
about, you seem to like dogs a little bit too much.
Right.
and you need to get past that because you can't love every dog there. Because you won't get anything done, and the dogs won't really benefit from that.
Right, exactly.
You can love every dog there, but you can't pay attention to every dog there.
All the time.
You have to do your job. And so we had a long conversation with that, and Mike actually expressed some concern that I like dogs too much, and that might be an obstacle for me getting past the business of dogs.
Yep.
And I feel fortunate that I think I can.
Right. Yes, you've demonstrated that during training week. So we'll see how that carries over into your own business.
That's what the lobby's for. You guys told me I can say hello to the dogs in the lobby.
We did, yeah. Well, it's true. We have franchisees who come into the system, and part of the reason they're coming in is because they do love dogs and they want to work with dogs every day. So we want to provide that opportunity to them,
sure,
while also balancing out, staying true to what our mission is, which is to provide a kind of a safe place for dogs to be
a safe
dogs.
environment for them to spend their day and give the owners comfort that these dogs are safe.
Right. So talk a little bit about your location, when you're going to be opening, kind of what you hope to do for the community of Gaithersburg.
Well, we found our location pretty quickly. I actually was looking before our discovery day. So even though I couldn't commit to anything, I could window shop all I wanted.
Yep.
And so just about a month after I signed the franchise agreement, I had found a place. Took a little while to get the signatures because a lot of people wanted to hang on. The lawyers wanted to hang on to it for 10 days, whether they were doing anything with it or not.
Right.
Just took a while.
That's their standard window.
Right. And we've had, if I had to give one piece of advice to new franchisees is when Mike tells you it's going to take longer than you think, believe him.
Right. That goes for probably, site selection and build out, right? Because you're in the middle of build out now.
Right, now I'm in the middle of build out, and we took a while to get our drawings done, and another 6 weeks to get our permits. We finally got our permits. We were lucky enough that we were able to do a lot of things that didn't require permits.
Right.
In the building, so we were able to paint and clean, and so it gets signage that does not require permitting. But nobody could put a nail in the floor without the permit.
Yeah.
And so we're looking to open in the next 6 weeks, maybe sometime the end of October, And we're excited about it. And I'll say the other thing I've recognized is the marketing plan that is out there is just superior. There's a plan. There's metrics. Even now that I'm not even open, and I can see things happening already.
Yep.
And so the people who have an opportunity or need my services are seeing that opportunity to come find me.
Right.
And so that has helped. I can't accept a dog at all.
Right. But you're getting inquiries.
But I'm getting inquiries all the time.
Right.
And so that has been, quite frankly, a great strength that is very difficult to see at the beginning.
Yes, that's a good point. Yeah, I think until the marketing starts, everyone has this moment of, are their dogs going to even come to my facility?
Right.
So when you start seeing the form fills coming in and the phone ringing, it's a bit comforting.
Right. Yeah, I'm going to have a party, and I'm hoping somebody's going to show up.
Right, yeah.
Right. So community-wise, we've become members of the Chamber of Commerce, and it's a very strong Chamber of Commerce in Gaithersburg. And so they provide value in areas for us to meet people and do some outreach.
Right.
On those fronts. There's also a lot of folks got dogs during this crisis.
Yes. We're seeing a lot of them come into our open stores now. Yep.
And as people start getting back to work, they're going to realize they need something. And the marketing is touching them and saying, hey, this might be a good opportunity, come take a look.
Right.
But also now, conversely, some of the shelters aren't as full as they used to be.
Right.
But we partner with those. We look to partner with some of those shelters, even if there's not that many dogs. Some of those dogs. And many years ago, I met a dog at one of those PetSmart things, and this dog was sitting very nicely, and I'm wondering, why is that dog here? There's nothing wrong with this dog. It's a beautiful dog. Well, the parents didn't like that the kids weren't taking care of the dog, so they gave the dog away.
Wow, yeah.
And unfortunately, that could happen. So we could have some reverse. But these nice dogs, need to be able to get socialized so they get recognized.
Right. Yes.
So that they can get rehomed. And if they're in a shelter all the time, they lose some of that socialization skill.
For sure. That's where the charity steps in, I think, the Hounds Town Charities, and provides that opportunity at the location level.
Right. So we're looking forward. You know, we're even looking beyond it to our second location. And
right.
So,
yes, that's a good point.
Yes.
So you have a 3-pack.
I have a 3-pack.
Yeah.
Yes, and I mean, if I could move on it now, I would.
Right.
But I think I'm busy right now.
Yeah. We'll wait to open your first store, but I like the incentive. That's for sure. Well, we've got to wrap things up. We've got just a minute left. Thanks for joining and providing your insight. I think it's always interesting to get people's insight as they're moving through the process. There are challenges, of course, to this business, just like everything in life. But I think if you keep a cool, calm temperament and just kind of go into it knowing what to expect, it seems like that's part of the key.
The one thing I've found over the time I've been doing this build out, and then we need to go, is when I've questioned what's happened, when I've wondered, we had a signage discussion, right? I thought, this is why I went in, I entered into a franchise agreement, because I may not necessarily agree that sign should look like this.
Right.
But the fact is, if it was just me, I would have had to do all of that.
Right, exactly.
On my own. That's why, and I remind myself, that's why I entered into a franchise.
Of course, we've got all the resources.
You've got all those resources for me. So that's
great. Well, thanks, Rich, so much for joining. Thanks for watching us. We'll see everybody next time. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and all your other podcast platforms. See everybody next week.
Thanks, everybody.